Hello and welcome. In this video, I'll be talking about certain changes that I've made in the Excel sheet upload and how I have called the stored procedure and certain problems I had to deal with. So let's go into, now you must be familiar with the screen that you see because I have shared the same thing in the last video. So let's go into our code and see what changes I've made into it. So our front end is absolutely the same and nothing special in it. It's the same thing that we did in the last video, except for one thing I'd like to mention over here, that is the content type and JSON.stringify. So, and we know that the content type is application JSON, and as I was talking about that, we are sending the base 64 encoded data when we used this file reader. So what is the use of this JSON.stringify? Because when we send the base 64 encoded data through a HTTP request, then how come the understanding of JSON comes into picture? As we know that OData and this AJAX call is actually making an OData call, right? And OData is made on top of HTTP request. So the HTTP is actually taking the binary data that is base 64 encoded, but then, you know, since you are sending it over OData, so you have your base 64 encoded file, but that's converted into a JSON format. That means an object that has got a property value. Since it's an OData, also you have to send the thing into a JSON string. So which is why, and the content type is mentioned over here that it's application JSON, right? So HTTP base 64 is there. That's been packed inside the JSON property value, right? So which is why we use this particular thing. Now coming back to our main backend, so the codes are nearly the same, but what we have dropped certain things in it is, like you might have seen in the last video. I might not have used it, I remember, but then I even dropped this one. So you can see the file content is read over here. Since we want the split to be done after the command, we need to get the base 64 encoded data. After that, we buffer it. And after buffering, we simply use the workbook. That means we allow Excel SX to read the buffer. So here, the changes that I made over here is buffer.buffer. Before that, it was bytes.buffer. So I saw that since the same thing was coming from the constant buffer and the same thing was coming from the constant bytes, it's just, you know, I'm using one more step inside the buffer to get the unit 8 array, applying the new unit 8 array, and then converting that into a byte, is storing whatever we got from here into byte, and then we're using bytes.buffer. So bytes over here, and if you go into debug mode, you will see that bytes has got a property called as buffer. So maybe the child, I would say, bytes.buffer. So when I checked out the buffer, since I was getting the same result from both buffer and bytes, so I just need to apply the correct path for it. So I put buffer.buffer over here, and it worked. So this is one change that I have made, and I dropped the a for loop that was being done over here, and that was you know, that would cause a lot of latency when you have got a data as big as 1 lakh report, and we simply needed to just convert the base 64 encoded data into the required JSON format. So we do not require any kind of iteration over each character or each index. So we just drop the for loop over here and read the file, and we got the JSON sheet over here. And then the codes are the same. Now, in the last video, I talked about the insertion of the data directly into the database in the entity student, but this time I have used a stored procedure to insert the data, and this is the name of the stored procedure that I've used. So let's go. Okay, so how to make a procedure is simple. That you just need to go to the kind of view and go to the command palette and look for create artifact. So you can create this database artifact like stored procedure or synonyms or whatever you want to, or roles or grants. These are all database artifacts. So from here, you need to select the right artifact that you want to make, and the name of the artifact is HTTP procedure. So here you see, this is how I've created it, and specified a name. Let's just say the name was for YouTube. So we can just create it like this, and you can see in the SRC folder over here, it will get created. You can see for YouTube HTTP procedures created. This is how I've created a stored procedure where the insertion will take place. So coming back to a procedure, so although we don't need it, I just wanted to show how to create the procedure. And then coming back to here, I named the procedures as payload procedure. You can name it anything. And after that, you have mentioned certain data parameters, input parameters after the procedure name. And it's the same like the input data and what kind of data is that. So you need to actually get the exact nomenclature for for the things. Those are used over here as strings, but then in the database, the strings become the and varchar. So if it was an integer, then I suppose that it remained as an integer in the database. So after mentioning the type of data you have, so the input parameters you mentioned, now you go over here and insert into app students. So this is the name of okay. So this is the name of the entity as mentioned over here. So if you go and check the definition, it's called as okay. So just over here, console over here and see this is the name. Sorry, I don't know what the problem is. Let me just turn off a what. Just turn it on, check. It's working or not. So it stopped. So let's start it. In the meantime, we'll be discussing over here. So the problem that I faced over here is that in the insert into the entity name, as it is mentioned in the database, it's app student. So you have to take care of placing the exact same thing as it is mentioned over here, like this app underscore student. So do not put a dot or anything over here, otherwise you will get the problem. Okay, so another thing, you put this thing over here, and coming back to the only this one. Coming back to our backend, you see when we make the calls. Okay, so this is how we are actually calling the stored procedure. And one more thing I forgot to talk about. Once you make this thing, you need to press this icon over here, the deploy icon. So it deploys this HDB procedure and could be seen in your HDI container over here. So after you do it, you need to do a CDS run. I'm sorry, the CDS build, and then redeploy the whole thing using this deploy button, so that everything goes well and fine. So coming back to this point, so once you have called the stored procedure, I'll talk about the constant things later. First, you see, you have used the await function over here, and then you call the procedure. So I just mentioned the procedure name over here, payload procedure, as it is mentioned. You can see payload procedure. So this is what it was mentioned. So I just put this part into it, and it was not able to, when the code reached over here to this point, it was giving the correct information, but after that the code was not able to find the procedure because the name of the schema wasn't mentioned before it. So after mentioning the name of the schema before the name of the procedure, everything started to work fine. So how do I get that? You can go over here into your let's refresh the whole thing, maybe start working. Okay, you can go over here and go to your procedure. When you go to your procedure, now you'll find two of them. No, one of them, because I haven't deployed it. So you can go to generate call statement. So when you go to generate call statement, this is what you see: call, the schema name, and so I just copied the whole part from here to here and put it inside the call, after call, and start work. Now let's go and debug the whole code once again and see how it's working. So you can see I've put multiple breakpoints over here, and we can directly go and check the thing out. So has it started working? If it's not, then data won't be inserted. It takes around more than 5 minutes, I suppose, to get started. What's running? So let's come back to our. So you see already I'm in the mode. That means let's refresh the whole thing. And to prompt it again, I'll use control and go into endpoint and web app. So we're going to browse. Browse. Load one. It's got 3 records in it. So I'm going to press and go to upload students now. We'll hit the debugger over here. Now let's go inside the file content. We got the file content and we got the buffer. This is how the buffer looked like. So from here, you see this buffer and the buffer and this buffer. So buffer.buffer. Okay, I'll use this one. So here you can see buffer.buffer. And after that, it reads, and everything is the same as the last time. You get the sheet name, and it's sheet 1, and then you get the sheet And finally, you convert the sheet into the JSON format, and this is how the data looks like. Your 3 records, and you convert the integer ID into the string ID, because in the entity I have used it as a string. So where's why it needs the conversion after that. Now over here, let the code hit this thing. It maps, and I've used over here for a nerve loop. What is a for of? Okay. And now it read the 3 records. Now you see I've made a constant that's called as a student, and this constant has got these 4 field name, ID, first name, last name, DOB, and address. So each time it actually checks on and the type of data that is coming from the formatted students data. This is the formatted students data, and checks the field name, and that's called as a student. And then it so the data insertion is taking place one by one. So you see it reaches to the next level. It gets these address, DOB, first name, ID, last name in the student's constant. So you can name it anything. So, and then you press it again. It goes for the, it checks this is the data that we have got in the first record. And then we can move ahead, and then it calls the stored procedure over here. It calls the stored procedure over here, and you see these are the input parameters, and then after so it inserts into the app students. This is how it is: ID, first name, last name, DOB, and address, and these are the values for each of the fields names. So it checks the field and the values. So for ID, let's say it's 1. For first name, it's whatever the value for the first name is, the last name, and DOB, and so on. So after it checks, means after it reaches over here, and insertion takes place one by one. So when you do a CDS run over here, so it checks the first record, goes to the stored procedure, and calls this procedure, and enters everything accordingly, right, into the database. The only thing is that the routing is done not directly through the entity, but through the stored procedure inside the database. So, and let's move ahead once again. So now it reads the second record, calls the stored procedure, and enters the data into the database. And the third record is read, and it pushes the value into the database. So this is how, and finally, it returns file uploaded successfully. And you can finish it, and you see file uploaded successfully. You got the message. And if you go into your database and check the app students, since we don't have any data right now, if you refresh it, we'll get our 3 records. Thanks for watching the video.